Welcome back to the Advanced Relationship Podcast. Just Bryce today. I wanted to do an episode on what to do if your partner is struggling. Usually I'm talking about if they're struggling emotionally, but it could also be with something physically and they aren't willing to get any help. And you're watching them and it's impacting you negatively. You're concerned about them. It's coming from care, but they don't want to get help. What do you do? But before we talk about what you could do, I want to talk about the three main objections that come up when people bring their concerns to their partner and their partner doesn't want to do anything about it. These are the top three objections. Number one, defensiveness or deflection. Usually it's going to look like anger or frustration. A common story or narrative that goes along with the defensiveness is you're trying to control me. And so when someone says or has the story that you're trying to control me, the thing that I want you to know as the person who is just concerned, just trying to show care, just trying to help, is that you do not have the power to control them. Unless you're physically making them do something, you can't control them. You can set boundaries and you can lay out potential consequences that might happen if they don't get help, but you don't control them. Their felt experience of feeling like they either have to do something or face consequences is a natural part of life that they don't feel like they have control over. But that's not your problem. That's their problem. And clients like to use the word ultimatum. That's like the negative connotation of setting boundaries, right? It's an ultimatum. If you do this, then maybe I'll do this. Or you're doing this and it has me feel this way and it's not good and it's negatively impacting our connection. So if you keep doing this, it's going to keep negatively impacting our connection. And I might not want to sleep with you or hang out with you, or I think we're going to keep struggling in conversation because you are struggling with this issue and you aren't getting help. And that's not going to get resolved between us if you don't get help. But setting a boundary is not an ultimatum. When I think about an ultimatum, that is if you're coming in without care. Okay. Like if you're coming in, and you're like, I don't care about you. And if you do this, I'm out of here and there's no care involved, then that might be an ultimatum. But when I talk to people, it's often coming from love and it's coming from care. And sometimes we have to do that for people in our lives when they aren't willing to get the help that they need. So when I think about ultimatums versus boundaries, it's really about the intention. If you really care about someone, it's not an ultimatum. By the same token, if you're with somebody and you're saying you really want them to get help and you're getting a lot of pushback and fire and anger and frustration or blame directed at you, you don't have to put up with that. It's okay to say, yeah, I'm not open to your interpretations of why I'm doing this. And this is what I want. And this is what might happen if you don't get help. It's okay to say that from a loving and caring place, but also being firm. You have to be kind inside and firm outside occasionally when people are being really, really defensive and resistant. So that's number one. The probably the number one way that people resist receiving a call to action to get help for themselves as they get defensive. And usually this looks like anger or frustration. And what I want you to know is don't buy into the story that you're trying to control them because it's not true, and stay firm with what you want. It's very possible and also natural and healthy throughout the course of being in relationship with someone for you to change in a good way and grow. And sometimes that comes from challenge. We need both challenge and support in our relationships. If it's just all support, let's just do what's comfortable, it'll stagnate. And if it's all challenge and no support, then it'll start to feel kind of like a fight. It is okay to challenge your partner to get help for themselves if you are looking at their life objectively and you can see that they have issues and they're doing nothing about it. If they're doing something, it's good to champion them and be like, yeah, keep it up. Like I can see that you're really trying and like there's still some things to work out here. But if they're doing nothing, and a lot of people are, they're doing absolutely nothing to tackle their core issues, it's okay to say, I really want you to get help for yourself. The second main objection that I see people give, or their strategy to deal with being asked to get help, is that they're all talk and no action. So people that say, oh yeah, you're totally right. Like I'm going to do that. I'm going to set up a therapy session, or I'm going to exercise more, or yeah, I'm going to work on that. but there's absolutely no action. And so a week later, a month later, a year later, you're in the very same spot and they're saying the very same thing. And it's kind of hard to make sense of that. It can be confusing when they seem so receptive and they seem motivated, but they don't actually do anything. One of the reasons why some people do this is growing up, they were maybe the peacemaker. So they learned how to use their words to really like calm everybody down because they were uncomfortable with conflict or didn't have the skills to deal with it. And so their strategy is just to say the right thing, but not really do anything about it. So what I want you to remember here, if you're the person that's asking for change, is you need to be specific. Like, how are we going to measure this change? What are you going to do in order to make this happen? And you might need timelines and you might need follow-up. Those are big, right? Accountability. You said that you were going to work on this. What exactly are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to set up a therapy session. When are you going to set it up by? If they say, I don't know, say, well, that's what I've been hearing from you, and I'd really like to see you set this up within 2 weeks. And if they hem and haw or whatever they do, it's okay to say, listen, I want to see you take some action here. I care about you. And can we come to an agreement here on what's a reasonable time frame for you to set up a session? And then I want to follow up on this in 2 weeks and see if you did it or not. It's okay to hold their feet to the fire some. Again, I don't think that it feels good for you to be doing all the work, but sometimes this is what it takes. If you want something out of a relationship, I don't think it's helpful to like drag someone across the finish line, but at the same time, sometimes it does require a little bit of dragging, right? And that might even look like setting a boundary and saying, like, I'm not going to cover these issues with you until you go and figure some of this stuff out on your own. For instance, if someone is plagued by anxiety about work or money or extended family or it's just generally life, and they use you as a sounding board to kind of help them, it's okay to say, I don't want to be your therapist. I'm here to support you as long as you're doing your own work, but I don't want you to come home after work anymore and just lay out everything that you felt anxious about today if you're not also getting help on your own. Because it's totally possible that you're in some codependent pattern where you become like their therapist. And it's not a dynamic that usually feels good for too long. It can feel good to help, but then it can start to feel like they're just always leaning on you and you don't have the ability to lean on them. Ideally, in a secure, healthy relationship that feels good, you can both lean on each other when you need to because you're both doing your own work and you have an understanding of some processes and systems that work. And so you can also kind of like coach each other at times. But if it only goes one way and you're always the one supporting, you're both kind of like falling apart and just like fumbling through everything, it's just not going to feel good long term. So that is the second objection, is it's all talk and no action. The third main objection that I hear when couples are reporting back that they want their partner to get help is that their partner just shuts down and avoids. Like they don't really say anything at all. They just go numb, they freeze, or maybe you can feel them just get really tight and it's just tense and you really get nothing from them. And this can really suck because to be talking to a person that you care about and who you think cares about you 1 minute, and then to be talking to a brick wall the next, can feel really lonely and scary and sad. And maybe you feel angry or frustrated because all of a sudden it's like very apparent that you're carrying everything. You're carrying the desire for both of you to be healthy, and they're just disappeared. They're not even here. They're completely shut down. Unfortunately, this is a really difficult strategy to work with because you're not getting any information from them. If someone's not willing to talk, we can't make people talk. And if they feel better just shutting down and going away, and that's their way to deal with things, it can be really difficult to get them re-engaged again. So I really feel for anyone that's in this position. I think this is especially common in men because men aren't very emotionally resilient in my experience. They weren't taught how to talk about hard things, whereas like a lot of times women growing up are used to bringing in awkward or emotionally charged conversations and kind of working it out with each other. At least that's what I've seen. Men just don't do that. They just avoid tough conversations or topics altogether. So some guys go into full shutdown mode whenever their partner brings up something that has them feeling embarrassment or shame about. Or I think there are a lot of men out there that are quite depressed, really, and they are kind of living life looking out from their lonely, dark little cave. And I've been there myself when I was younger. It's not a fun place to be. And sometimes there's not much you can do to like coax them out of that. But I think one thing that tends to work best is to champion them, that you know that they're capable of more than they're currently doing, that you want them to be healthy. And then also for you to take care of yourself and be an example or model what it looks like to take care of yourself. Because whether you believe it or not, they're seeing you and how you handle your life. And so the better that you handle your relationships and your own health, the more that they're going to feel inspired, hopefully, to take charge of their own life. So if you're going to therapy or coaching and it's obviously having a positive impact on you and you're improving your relationships to yourself and others, it's going to be hard for them to deny that you asking them to get help isn't going to work for them, because it's obviously working for you. The evidence is right there. As a quick side note, I remember when I was a freshman in college and my parents set up an intervention for me because I had totaled my car one night and I had been in a lot of trouble and was failing college and drinking and using recreational drugs. And I remember the first thought that popped into my head when they set up this intervention was like, yeah, but my dad, like, he doesn't have his shit together either. And when I learned that he had been going to therapy and he had actually quit drinking, it's like I wasn't able to play that card. And I had seen him and I could feel from him that he was actually doing a lot of work on himself. There was something about it that really encouraged me to get help for myself, because I felt like I wasn't going to be doing this alone. Like there was someone else doing this with me in a sense. And especially in a marriage or a long-term relationship, it needs to feel equal. So the actions that both parties are taking should be fairly similar in their own right. If one person's doing tons of work on themselves and the other person is doing none, it's going to feel imbalanced at some point because one person is growing and one person really isn't. So hopefully for anyone out there, I know people that listen to podcasts like this with Jenny and I are interested in self-development, and it's common to have people in your life, maybe even partners, that aren't as interested. Hopefully this helps you understand the top 3 main objections that people have to getting their own help and how to navigate that when it comes up. So that's all I got today. Good luck.